The fluorescent lights of the emergency room had a way of making everything look both too bright and completely lifeless at the same time. Sarah Mitchell sat in one of those uncomfortable plastic chairs that seemed designed to prevent comfort, her hands trembling as she clutched a styrofoam cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. The nurse had said any minute now, 45 minutes earlier, but time worked differently in hospitals. It stretched and compressed like a rubber band, and right now, every second felt like it was being pulled to its breaking point. Her daughter, Emma, was somewhere beyond those double doors, fighting for her life after a car accident that shouldn't have happened. A drunk driver running a red light at 3 in the afternoon on a sunny Tuesday. That's all it took to turn Sarah's world upside down. One moment she was planning what to make for dinner. The next she was racing to the hospital, her heart lodged somewhere in her throat. Unable to breathe, unable to think, unable to do anything but pray to a God she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and desperation. An elderly man sat in the corner, his face buried in his hands. A young couple huddled together, whispering words of comfort that probably weren't working. A teenage boy stared blankly at his phone, his leg bouncing up and down in that nervous rhythm that spoke of barely contained panic. They were all there for someone. They were all fighting invisible battles, hoping for miracles, bargaining with fate. Sarah's phone buzzed. Another text from her sister. Another message she couldn't bring herself to answer. What was she supposed to say? That she was falling apart? That every breath felt like glass in her lungs? That she couldn't stop replaying the moment she got the call? The way her entire body went numb? The way the officer's voice on the other end was too calm? Too practiced? Too accustomed to delivering news that shattered lives? Mrs. Mitchell? Sarah's head snapped up. A doctor stood there, still in her surgical scrubs, her mask pulled down around her neck. Her face was impossible to read, professionally neutral, and Sarah felt her stomach drop. This was it. This was the moment that would define the rest of her life. But before the doctor could speak, before Sarah could hear words that might break her completely, something strange happened. A woman appeared beside the doctor, carrying a small paper bag. She was maybe 60, with silver hair pulled back in a loose bun and eyes that seemed to hold a lifetime of their own. Sorrows and joys. "Excuse me," the woman said softly, her voice like warm honey. "I know this isn't the time, but I saw you sitting here and I needed to tell you something." The doctor paused, looking between them, and Sarah couldn't process what was happening. Her brain was short-circuiting, trying to understand why this stranger was interrupting the most important moment of her life. "My name is Margaret," the woman continued, not waiting for permission. 32 years ago, I sat in this exact waiting room. My son was in surgery after a motorcycle accident. I was where you are right now, and I wanted to die. I couldn't imagine a world where I'd survive if he didn't." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She didn't want to hear this. She didn't want someone else's story. She wanted her daughter. She wanted to rewind time. She wanted anything but this moment. "A stranger gave me this," Margaret said, holding up the paper bag. She said it got her through the worst night of her life, and she wanted me to have it. I never saw her again, but what she gave me saved me in ways I can't explain. My son survived. He's a father now. He teaches kindergarten in Phoenix. But even if he hadn't survived, what this stranger did for me in that moment reminded me that humanity is bigger than our worst days. She pressed the bag into Sarah's hands. Inside was a small leather journal, its pages worn but carefully preserved. Sarah opened it with shaking fingers and saw handwriting, dozens of different styles filling the pages. They were notes, short messages. "You are stronger than you know. Love is the only thing that's real. Tomorrow will come and you will face it. Your pain matters. Your hope matters. You matter." Page after page of words from strangers, each one leaving a small piece of their heart, their strength, their belief in the possibility of tomorrow. That journal has been passed between people in this waiting room for over 3 decades, Margaret said quietly. Everyone who receives it adds something before passing it on. It's traveled between people who never met, never knew each other's names, but understood the same fear, the same love, the same desperate hope. The doctor, who had been watching this exchange with patient eyes, cleared her throat gently. Sarah looked up, her vision blurred with tears, clutching the journal like a lifeline. "Mrs. Mitchell," the doctor said, and there was the smallest hint of a smile at the corners of her mouth. Your daughter is going to be okay. She's stable. The surgery went well. She's got a long recovery ahead, but she's going to make it. The world stopped spinning. Sarah couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, could only sit there as relief crashed over her in waves so powerful she thought she might drown in gratitude. Emma was alive. Her little girl was alive. Margaret squeezed Sarah's shoulder, and when Sarah looked up at her through tear-stained eyes, the older woman was smiling. Write something in there when you're ready, she said, and when you see someone who needs it, you'll know. 3 months later, Sarah found herself back in that hospital, but this time walking beside Emma, who was using a cane but walking nonetheless, heading to a follow-up appointment. As they passed through the emergency room waiting area, Sarah saw her. A young woman, maybe 25, sitting in those same uncomfortable plastic chairs, her face a mirror of the terror Sarah had felt. Her hands were clenched together so tightly her knuckles were white. Her eyes were fixed on those double doors with an intensity that was all too familiar. Sarah stopped walking. Emma, who knew the whole story, who had cried when her mother told her about Margaret and the journal, squeezed her mother's hand. Go, she whispered. Sarah approached slowly, the journal in her purse. She'd spent weeks deciding what to write, finally settling on something simple but true. In your darkest moment, you are not alone. Generations of love are holding you up, even when you can't feel it, especially when you can't feel it. Excuse me, Sarah said softly to the young woman. I know this is a difficult time. The woman looked up, her eyes red-rimmed and exhausted, defensive and vulnerable all at once. Sarah knew that look. She'd worn it herself. I want to give you something that someone gave me when I needed it most, Sarah continued, sitting down in the chair beside her. You don't have to talk to me. You don't have to tell me anything. But I want you to have this, because it helped me survive, and maybe it will help you too. She pulled out the journal and placed it gently in the woman's lap. The young woman stared at it, then opened it with trembling fingers, her eyes scanning the pages of handwritten notes, decades of strangers offering light in the darkness. What is this? She whispered. It's proof, Sarah said simply. Proof that people care. Proof that you're not alone. Proof that kindness is real and it matters and it's being passed from hand to hand, heart to heart even when everything feels hopeless. The young woman began to cry, not the quiet tears Sarah had expected, but deep, shaking sobs that seemed to come from somewhere profound. Sarah did what Margaret had done for her. She simply sat there, a quiet presence, a witness to pain, an offering of silent solidarity. My girlfriend, the young woman finally managed to say between sobs. Car accident. They said, I know, Sarah said softly. I know exactly what they said because I heard those same words. And I know nothing I say will make this easier. But you're going to get through this moment. And the next one and the one after that. And this journal will be with you, reminding you that you're part of something bigger than your fear. A doctor emerged from the double doors calling a name. The young woman stood, clutching the journal to her chest like armor. She looked at Sarah with eyes that held a question she couldn't voice. Go, Sarah said, the same word Emma had whispered to her. And when you're ready, when you see someone who needs it, you'll know what to do. The young woman nodded and walked toward the doctor, and Sarah watched her go, feeling the weight of something shift in her chest. This was how healing happened, she realized. Not in grand gestures or perfect words, but in small acts of recognition. One broken person reaching across the void to touch another, saying without saying, I see you. I was you. You will survive this. Emma came up beside her mother, slipping her arm through Sarah's. They stood there together, two people who had faced the worst and found their way through, watching as the journal continued its journey, carrying with it the accumulated hope of strangers who became connected through the simple, revolutionary act of caring about someone they'd never met and likely never would. Do you think she'll be okay? Emma asked quietly. Sarah thought about that question, about Margaret, about the dozens of people who had written in that journal over the years, about the invisible thread connecting them all. I think she'll have what we had, she said finally. A reminder that humanity at its core is beautiful, that even in our darkest moments, there are people who will sit beside us in the waiting room of life and say, You're not alone. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's everything. They walked out of the hospital together into the afternoon sunlight, leaving behind a small act of kindness that would ripple forward in ways they'd never see, touching lives they'd never know, proving that sometimes the most profound revolutions happen not with a roar but with a whisper, not with armies but with a simple gesture from one heart to another, saying, "I see your pain and I'm leaving you something to hold on to." Title her hero if you want, or title her saint, or title her nothing at all, because the truth is, she was simply human and that was more than enough.